Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
My name is Marcus Lang, and I turned 34 the night my wife didn't come home for my birthday. No emergency, no car crash, no illness in the family. She just didn't show up. And the reason? A Persian cat named Maple. I wish I was exaggerating. I really do. I'd spent that week doing what I thought was the considerate, husbandly thing. Booked us a quiet table at the rooftop bar where we had our first date, an understated place with old jazz records playing on vinyl, soft candlelight, and a view of the skyline that made her smile the first time we were there. I arranged the same booth. Even requested the same server, who remembered us. I picked up a wine she once said reminded her of late summer and cinnamon. Got her a small gift box with a vintage necklace I found at a flea market in Salem, the kind with pressed glass and a clasp like the one her grandmother wore. I even stopped by her favorite bakery and bought those ridiculous vanilla pistachio pastries that cost more than a meal. I did all that. And she didn't come. Around 5:47 p.m., as I was adjusting my shirt in the mirror, my phone lit up. Her name flashed across the screen, Juliana, and I answered with a grin already forming. I assumed it'd be her saying she was downstairs or stuck in traffic. But instead, I heard party music in the background and laughter I didn't recognize. "Hey, babe," she said, casually, like we were talking about what groceries to pick up. "I can't make it tonight. Camille's throwing a party for Maple. It's her first birthday, her first baby. Really. You get it, right?" I stared at my own reflection, still holding my cufflink. "Wait. Camille's cat." "Yeah," she said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Maple. You remember her. The Persian with the fluffy white coat. She's one today. Camille's doing this whole little bash, cake, balloons, party favors. It's adorable." I didn't even know how to respond. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but my throat felt like it had closed in on itself. I must have stood there for a full 5 seconds, trying to believe I'd misheard her. So I just said it. 2 words. Duly noted. She laughed like it was a joke. "Don't be dramatic. I'll make it up to you, okay? We'll go out next weekend. Promise." She hung up before I could speak again. I stood there in silence, still in the shirt I ironed for the occasion, still holding her dessert in a brown paper box, still smelling faintly of the cologne she once bought me for our 3rd anniversary. And in that moment, something broke, not loudly, not dramatically. No yelling or cursing. It just cracked, quietly, like the soft snap of a thread under too much pressure. That was the last time I pretended things didn't bother me. The last time I made excuses for her. The last time I tried to justify being left behind. Dinner at the rooftop was already paid for. I went anyway. Ate alone. The server looked confused when I said the other person wouldn't be joining. I told him she got caught up in something. He gave me a look of sympathy, then offered a free dessert. I declined. I wasn't hungry by then. Back at home, I sat on the couch in a dim room and stared at my phone. I scrolled through social media, and sure enough, there it was. Camille's story feed, filled with pink and gold balloons, cat-themed cupcakes, and a ridiculous sign that read, "Happy first to our queen, Maple." A tiny silver tiara sat atop the cat's head. People wore matching shirts. They were toasting with champagne. Someone made a 3-tiered cake that looked better than our wedding cake. And there, near the back of one photo, was my wife, laughing, holding a glass of Prosecco, and wearing a glittery sash that read, "Andy to the Queen." I looked at the timestamp. That photo was taken at exactly 6:14 p.m., which meant while I was staring down a candle across from an empty chair, she was grinning ear to ear over a cat in a tutu. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was angry, though I was, but because I kept turning things over in my head. Not just the dinner. Not just the missed birthday. It was everything leading up to it. The 1,000 quiet moments where I let little things slide. Where I told myself, she's tired, or she didn't mean it like that. Or, it's not worth bringing up. But it was worth it. All of it was. Because they added up, those moments where I was treated like a placeholder rather than a partner. The next morning, I woke up early. Made coffee. Sat in silence as the sun rose. And I remembered that phrase she used. It's her first baby. Not our child. Not our future. But a cat. Her sister's cat. I went into the kitchen and looked at the small card I'd left out the night before. It had a simple message. To another year with the only person who sees me. It was meant for her. I picked it up and dropped it in the trash without ceremony. No tears. No second thoughts. And when she came home the next afternoon, still giddy from the iconic party, she kissed my cheek, dropped her purse on the table, and said, "We'll celebrate your birthday later this week, okay?" I didn't forget. I just couldn't miss Maple's first big moment. I looked at her, looked at the way she poured herself a glass of water and laughed about how the cat had knocked over a candle. And I said nothing, because deep down, I already knew something she didn't. She'd made her choice. Now it was my turn. The morning after my birthday, the one I spent alone eating takeout while my wife posed with a cat in a tiara, I woke up to a fraud alert from my bank. At first, I assumed it was some scam. Maybe some overseas hacker with a penchant for stealing from boring 34-year-old husbands. But when I opened the details, I just sat there blinking at the charge. $2,500 to a boutique photography studio called Posh Portraits, Elite Feline Package. That was the actual name. I read it again. Elite Feline Package. I called the bank, half expecting it to be a prank or some billing glitch. But the billing address? It was my sister-in-law Camille's apartment. I asked the agent to freeze the card. Then I just sat on the edge of the bed for a while, staring at the sunlight bleeding through the curtains like it was mocking me. My birthday had barely ended, and here I was, already in the next chapter of this twisted little book. I called Juliana. She picked up on the third ring, sounding groggy, like I'd interrupted her spa day. I didn't even ask how the cat party went. I went straight for it. "Did you authorize a $2,500 charge to something called Posh Portraits?" There was a pause, just long enough for the guilt to rise through the speaker. Then came the tone. That tone. The one where she makes you feel like you're the one being unreasonable. "Oh, that. Yeah." It was a surprise for Camille. "I was going to tell you later," she said, like I was ruining the mood by asking about stolen money. "A surprise? Using my card. You always said you'd support family." I laughed once, sharp and bitter. "Support, not sponsor their delusion." "It was for Maple's birthday," she added, as if saying it slowly would somehow justify it. "It's Camille's first baby." "No, it's a cat," I replied. "A cat with a diamond collar and a photo shoot more expensive than our honeymoon." She hung up on me. Just like that. Not a sorry. Not a sigh of understanding. Just silence. So I did what any rational man would do. I locked every joint account we had. Changed the passwords. Transferred funds out of the shared savings into an account under my name only. And then I sat in my home office, the same place I'd done taxes for both of us, where I'd stayed up late working on Juliana's resume once upon a time, and I looked through every recent transaction from the last 3 months. The pattern was there. Small charges, subtle transfers. $75 to Camille's supplies. $120 labeled family wellness. $99 for pet accessories. All seemingly harmless if you weren't paying attention. But I do. I always have. Because I'm the guy who pays attention to the details no one else wants to bother with. I'm the guy who remembers our Wi-Fi password when Juliana forgets it for the 5th time. I'm the guy who tracks the subscriptions she swears she canceled. That morning, I became the guy who caught it all. By noon, her mother had called. Meredith, the queen of crocodile tears. I didn't answer, but she left a voicemail full of dramatic pauses and fake quivers. "Marcus, sweetheart. I just heard from Juliana. This is all just a misunderstanding. You don't want to hurt Camille like this. She's fragile. She's been through a lot." Camille had been through a lot ever since she stubbed her toe in high school and decided she was emotionally allergic to consequences. I didn't respond. A few minutes later, I got the first text from Camille herself. "Marcus, it's not what you think. Maple didn't do anything. We were just celebrating love. Isn't that what life's about?" I stared at the screen, then typed back a single word. Blocked. Then came more texts. 13 of them. Rapid fire. Each one more desperate and ridiculous than the last. "We're family. Please don't make this ugly. You used to be cool. What happened to you? Fine. Keep the money. I hope it buys you some happiness because you clearly need it. Maple's been crying all morning." That one got me. I sat there, stunned, rereading it like it might mean something else. The cat had been crying all morning. I imagined it, just for a second, a spoiled little fluff ball in a rhinestone onesie, weeping into her gold-plated water bowl while Juliana comforted her like a Victorian widow. Maple hadn't done anything. They were right about that. But I had. And what I was about to do next wasn't petty. It was strategic, calculated, controlled. I opened a spreadsheet, titled it Damage Control, And I started itemizing every single way they had taken from me emotionally, financially, socially. Every manipulation disguised as love. Every withdrawal labeled as joint expense, when in truth, I was just the ATM with a last name. Juliana had always said I was too methodical, too clinical, that I didn't show enough emotion. I used to think she was right, that maybe I lacked passion. But now I realized emotion doesn't solve betrayal. Precision does. Order does. Logic and evidence and airtight strategy. That's how you win against people who live off chaos and excuses. So I gathered it all. Emails, texts, bank statements, even the RSVP list from the cat party, which I found in a shared folder Juliana forgot to delete. The guest list read like a roll call for betrayal. Meredith, Camille, even coworkers I thought were neutral. And the comment section under the party photos? Can't believe she chose the cat over him. LOL. Poor Marcus. Hope he enjoys his takeout. One comment from someone named Troy read, honestly, Juliana upgraded. At least Maple doesn't nag. I didn't know who Troy was, but I would find out. I sat back, cracked my knuckles, and smiled. Not a joyful smile. Not even a smug one. Just the kind of smile you wear when a puzzle finally starts making sense. Juliana and her circus thought they were dealing with the old version of me, the man who nodded along, who apologized just to keep the peace, who paid for everyone's dinner without saying a word. That guy died the moment I saw Elite Feline package on my credit card. What they didn't know was that I wasn't angry. I was awake, wide awake, and I wasn't about to yell or scream or throw anything. I was going to dismantle their fantasy life with receipts and silence. Because the one thing I'd learned? The calmest man in the room is always the one you should fear the most. It's strange what your mind starts to piece together when the fog of denial finally clears. After locking the accounts and freezing every card that morning, I sat in the kitchen with a stale cup of coffee, staring at the chipped edge of my favorite mug, the one Juliana gave me when we got engaged. "You're my common chaos," it said, in faded cursive. I turned it around slowly, watching the words blur as I replayed everything I'd ignored for too long. This wasn't the first time, was it? I used to tell myself that Juliana just had a quirky family. Loud, colorful, full of life. I'd smile and foot the bill when her cousin Oliver forgot his wallet at group dinners. I'd make the late-night runs when Camille needed allergy meds for her cat at 2 a.m. I even covered Meredith's veneers when she said her dental insurance wouldn't go through. I paid that $3,600 without blinking. At the time, I told myself, this is what love does. It extends beyond blood. But somewhere along the way, I became less of a husband and more of a credit line with a face. I remember the moment the first crack appeared, clear as day. 2 years ago, Camille missed her rent. Again, Juliana asked, "Can we help her out this once? She's going through a rough patch." I sent the money. 3 weeks later, I saw Camille post a photo at a beach resort in Tulum. Caption, "Healing looks good on me." Juliana laughed and said, "At least she's feeling better." I said nothing, but I remembered. The thing is, betrayal doesn't start big. It starts small, quiet. A joke here, a skip thank you there, a forgotten milestone dressed up as forgetfulness. But it builds. I saw the signs. I just didn't want to believe them. I got up and walked to the fridge, instinctively opening it even though I wasn't hungry. There, under the magnets and half-faded post-it notes, was the invitation. Maple's Milestone Bash. March 2nd. RSVP now. Dress code, glitter and glam. Gifts optional, but appreciated. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because that was the exact date Juliana and I had picked, weeks earlier, to celebrate my birthday. We had both marked it on the calendar. She even added a heart emoji next to the dinner time. But then she chose a cat and a tiara instead. I pulled the invite off the fridge and stared at it. Gold lettering, cartoon paw prints, even a mini RSVP QR code. She didn't forget. She prioritized it. The idea settled into my bones like cold water in winter. It didn't matter if it was intentional malice or casual negligence. What mattered was the truth. I didn't matter. Not to her. Not to Camille. Not to Meredith. I was a footnote in their group chat. A shared resource. That realization hit me harder than any argument ever could. I sat back down at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. Something tugged at me, curiosity? Resentment? I opened our shared cloud folder. Juliana and I used to upload vacation plans, budgeting sheets, even recipes in there. It had been months since I last looked. She hadn't logged out. There were new folders. Hidden under vague names like Memories Glowing Star and LOL Pics. I clicked on one. and my heart did a little jerk. Inside were screenshots. One was a screen grab of our birthday dinner reservation confirmation, date, time, even the little note I left in the booking. First place we ever held hands. Can't wait to go back. The next screenshot was of the text I'd sent her that morning. Don't forget 7 p.m. tonight. I'll be wearing the jacket you love. Beneath that, a caption she'd added before sharing it in a group chat. LOL, Marcus is so dramatic. It's not like he's turning 80. I scrolled further. Camille had commented, he'll live. Maple's party is iconic. Meredith replied with a gif of someone rolling their eyes. More messages followed. Laughter emojis. Cat memes. One of them called me birthday boy babyface. Another joked, maybe get him a squeaky toy and call it even. I don't know what hurt more, the mocking or the casual way they assumed I wouldn't matter. That I wouldn't find out. That I wouldn't do anything if I did. I should have felt rage. But what I felt was colder. More dangerous. Detachment. I leaned back, staring at the screen. The betrayal wasn't about a cat party. That was just the trigger. The real betrayal was the quiet decision, made somewhere along the line, that my feelings didn't require consideration. That my milestones could be skipped. That my support was owed, not appreciated. I closed the laptop and sat in silence, my hands folded in my lap like I was waiting for something. But there was no doorbell. No apology. No attempt to make things right. That night, I went through my journal. Yes, I kept one. Call it old-fashioned, but I like to write things out. Patterns. Thoughts. Truths I'm not ready to say aloud. And as I read through my older entries, I realized something strange. The happier the entry sounded on the surface, the more passive aggression it masked underneath. Juliana got her bonus today. Treated herself to a full spa day. She deserves it. We'll celebrate my raise next week. Camille stopped by. Took some of her wine without asking. Juliana says I'm too uptight. Meredith asked for help moving. I canceled my work trip. Juliana says it's family, and family comes first. I was always second. Or third. Or forgotten entirely. I looked up and caught my own reflection in the window. The man staring back wasn't angry. He was quiet. Tired. But not broken. I took the mug from the table, walked to the sink, and set it down gently. Then I opened my phone and deleted our shared calendar. I archived our photos. I paused our shared grocery app. These were small steps. But they were the first ones I took just for me. No more playing the helper. No more waiting to be chosen. This time, I would choose myself. And I wasn't going to announce it. I wasn't going to fight or scream or beg. I'd simply let them do what they've always done. Assume I was too soft to do anything about it. Because the best part about being underestimated is the look on their faces when you finally prove them wrong. I used to think the worst part of betrayal was the moment it happened. Turns out, it's the echo, the way the memory plays on loop in your head at random hours. Midnight. Lunch break. While brushing your teeth. That night, though, it wasn't a memory. It was very real. I sat on the couch with a bag of takeout in my lap, soggy fries, a smashed burger, and stared at the TV without really watching. The room was dim, the silence heavy. I hadn't touched my food. My birthday plans had dissolved into grease-stained napkins, while my wife celebrated a Persian cat like it had cured cancer. And then I opened Instagram. Now, I don't usually scroll deep, but my curiosity had outpaced my self-respect. The first post was from Camille, Juliana's sister. There was Maple, the cat, perched on a miniature throne. No, I'm not exaggerating. A throne. Gilded wood, velvet cushion, gold tassels on the corners. Behind her was a balloon arch that spelled Maple's one in pastel pink. I scrolled again. There was a photo of the cake, a 3-tier monstrosity, complete with fondant paw prints, edible gold flakes, and a glittering topper shaped like a crown. Camille had captioned it, "Only the best for my baby queen." Hashtag Maple milestone, hashtag for baby firsts. Another video showed Juliana clapping excitedly as Maple was carried out in a tutu and tiara by a hired cat handler. People cheered. Someone popped confetti. A slow-motion boomerang looped Juliana tossing her head back in laughter, champagne in hand, while a guy with cat ears on his head danced behind her. I just sat there. I think my mouth was hanging open, but I was too stunned to notice. I felt the kind of ache you get when someone close to you passes you on the street without recognizing you. But it was worse because this person had once promised forever. And now she was throwing a party for a cat with more attention to detail than anything she'd ever done for me. Then came the shirts. Yes, shirts. Custom-made ones. They said, "Annie to the Queen, Cat Uncle, Maple's godfather. They all wore them proudly, posing like it was a roya. Meredith, Juliana's mom, had her arms around Juliana and Camille in one shot, holding a champagne flute and wearing a sash that read, "Cat Grandma." I stared at that photo for a long time. Too long. Something in me broke and reassembled differently after that. I thought back to the night I proposed to Juliana. We were on a dock by the lake, just before sunrise, wrapped in a blanket and each other. She cried, said she'd never imagined feeling so chosen. But now, a cat got what I used to. Celebration. Loyalty. Love. Maybe. I don't know. All I knew was I hadn't even gotten a text from her that evening. I opened our shared drive to distract myself. It was something we'd used back when we planned trips together, budget folders, dream destinations, packing lists. She hadn't logged out, and that's when I found it. A new folder called Memes for Maple. At first, I thought it was harmless. Maybe just some funny cat content. But inside were screenshots. One of them was a picture of the birthday reservation I had emailed her 2 weeks earlier, with the caption, "Marcus is doing the most. He acts like turning 34 is some sacred event." Camille had commented, "LOL, he'll live. Maple's party is iconic." Another one had a meme of a man holding a single balloon at a party alone. Juliana had added the caption, "Me dodging birthday dinner for fur baby fabulousness." My hand was clenched around my phone so tightly I felt my knuckles pop. And still, I wanted to believe it was a joke, that maybe I was taking it too seriously, that it wasn't personal. But how do you keep giving grace to people who think your pain is punchline material? I clicked out and sat in the dark, chewing on nothing but the bitter taste in my mouth. Then the worst post came. A boomerang of Maple pawing at a tiny velvet box. Juliana captioned it. She said yes. "LOL, JK, it's a toy ring." But still, a toy engagement ring. For a cat. I proposed with a family heirloom ring that took 6 months to repair and resize. She told me then that it was perfect, that she felt like the luckiest woman alive. But now she was laughing at the idea of engagement, tossing symbols of commitment like confetti while I sat here forgotten. The takeout bag crinkled in my lap. I finally stood up, walked to the trash, and dropped the untouched burger inside. My phone buzzed. "Juliana, hope you're not mad. We can do dinner this weekend instead?" No apology. No explanation. No acknowledgement of how she'd made me feel like an afterthought in my own life. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a note on my phone and started writing. Not to her. To myself. A list. Things I gave up for this marriage. My Seattle promotion. That summer Europe trip to pay off Camille's debt. My vintage record player she accidentally sold at a garage sale. Christmas with my family, 3 years in a row. My voice. And then I added a new header. Things she gave me in return. A cat party over my birthday. That was the moment I decided. No more quiet suffering. No more rationalizing disrespect. No more trying to earn the bare minimum. If Maple was royalty in her world, I didn't need to be a court jester anymore. I wasn't going to stay in a palace where I was the pet. The next morning, I'd start untangling myself from the web I'd been too polite to escape. Quietly, strategically, and with the kind of calm that unnerves the people who expect you to explode. Because this wasn't about Maple. It never really was. It was about being replaced without anyone having the decency to admit it. About watching my worth shrink in the eyes of someone who once called me everything. So no, I didn't throw a fit. I didn't drive over there. I didn't call her out. I simply started planning. And every time I looked at that cake with the gold letters that spelled out a cat's name in celebration, I remembered mine. Carved on no plate, spoken in no toast, and skipped like it meant nothing. But not for long. You'd think after skipping your husband's birthday for a cat party, the universe might give you a hint to dial it back. But no, Juliana wasn't finished, not by a long shot. The morning after I watched them pose with a diamond-collared feline and laugh at my expense, I woke up to a notification from my bank. Another fraud alert. This time, the transaction was flagged as suspicious activity. I opened the banking app, scrolled to the flagged entry, and there it was, $1,320. Pause and people retreat, Napa Valley. A luxury spa weekend for people and their cats. Aromatherapy palm massages. Reiki alignment. A synchronized soaking tub experience. I thought it was a parody. Nope, it was real. And the charge? Attempted on the same credit card Juliana and I used for our emergency fund. I didn't call her. I didn't text her. I just sat in silence at our kitchen counter, drinking my coffee black and watching the sun creep over the backyard fence like it was sneaking in on a secret. I opened the shared account dashboard. I hadn't checked it in months. We had an unspoken rule. She handled soft expenses, and I handled the big-ticket stuff: insurance, mortgage, maintenance. But when I refreshed the transaction history, my jaw locked. There they were. Quiet, weekly withdrawals. Small at first. $75.42 labeled shared groceries. Then $96.11 for pet wellness supplements. Another $143.89 under family hosting supplies, none of which I recalled authorizing. All were subtly disguised. And the pattern? It always landed on Thursdays. Every single one. I leaned in, squinting at the transfer destination. A dummy account listed under the name CM Maple Mother. I stared at the name like it might blink and tell me it was all a misunderstanding. CM, Camille. Maple Mother, Juliana's inside joke with her sister. A name I once laughed at too, back when I thought I was part of the joke and not the punchline. In total, $1,872.48 siphoned off in less than 8 weeks. Gone from our joint account and funneled into what I now suspected was a personal fund for their fluffy royal feline. Maybe Tieras, maybe spa trips, maybe gourmet tuna flown in from Tokyo. I didn't care about the money, not really. I cared about what it meant. The small theft was worse than a big one. It meant they didn't think I'd notice. Or worse, that even if I did, I wouldn't do anything about it. I printed out the entire transaction history. Every shady little transfer. I highlighted the patterns. I took screenshots of her texting Camille. "Don't worry, he never checks these things, LOL." Then another. "He thinks shared expenses means joint groceries." Faced with years of joy, Maple needed a new throne anyway. I sat there, still, for what felt like hours. No music. No noise. Just me and the sounds of betrayal humming through my printer as page after page documented the quiet erosion of my trust. I didn't confront her that night. No, I waited. I watched how she walked in after work, shopping bag in hand, new shoes that sparkled like the frosting on Maple's Instagram cake. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek like nothing had changed, and asked what we should do for dinner. I told her I wasn't hungry. I watched her sit on the couch, scrolling her phone, giggling at reels of animals wearing party hats. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I couldn't. Not yet. Because something in me had shifted. The old version of me? He would have called a meeting, set a boundary, asked for compromise. But this version? The one who was publicly replaced by a pet, financially ghosted by the woman he once believed had his back. He had no words left to waste. Only actions. That night I moved methodically. I separated my direct deposits. Set up an entirely new account in a different bank. I redirected all business payments. Even changed the online portals for billing, our utilities, our home security system, our streaming subscriptions. All of it. The following day, I visited my lawyer. Yes, I had one. His name was Darren. We hadn't spoken in years, not since I helped him build his website in exchange for free consultations. That favor was about to pay off. I didn't file anything official yet, but I laid the groundwork. Darren's eyes widened as I showed him the screenshots, the financial statements, the flagged charge attempts. "You have enough here," he said, tapping the folder, "to prove misappropriation, premeditated financial misconduct, and personal asset abuse. This isn't just bad behavior, Marcus. It's planned theft under the guise of marriage." I nodded. I wasn't surprised. But hearing it from someone else made it feel heavier. Realer. Juliana tried again 2 days later. This time, she tried to charge $418 for a luxury stroller. For Maple. No baby. No child. Just a cat. A velvet-lined stroller with shock-absorbent wheels and Bluetooth-controlled music. I watched the notification ping across my screen, then watched it immediately get declined. I smiled. Juliana came into the room moments later, holding her phone like it had betrayed her. "Hey, is the card acting up?" I tried to buy something in it. I interrupted. I froze the accounts. She blinked. "What? Why?" I turned to her, calmly. "Because someone's been stealing from me. And I don't leave the doors open when there's a thief in the house." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. Then, the defense: "It's not stealing if we're married. It was for Maple, and for Camille. You always said you support family. Family doesn't rob each other in $75 increments," I said, not raising my voice. She scoffed. "Well, You're making this a big deal over a cat. I held her gaze. No, Juliana. I'm making this a big deal over trust. The cat is just the glitter on the trash heap. She stormed off, slammed the bedroom door. Probably called Camille. Maybe her mom too. I didn't care. Let them form their little war council. I had my own artillery now. That night, while she slept, I went back through every message thread she'd forgotten to log out of. I saved everything, even the ones where Camille joked, if he ever finds out, tell him you were emotionally confused. He'll forgive you. I labeled each folder. I built a digital dossier titled, The Quiet Heist. And then, I waited. Not to retaliate. Not to scream. But to strike with precision. The kind you only learn when you've spent enough time being underestimated. Juliana didn't know it yet, but the man she married, the man who once smiled through all her chaos, footed all her sister's schemes, and turned a blind eye to her mother's manipulations, that man was gone. And in his place was someone who didn't just survive the betrayal. He documented it. And soon, he'd return the favor. Juliana texted me a week after the last card attempt failed. Let's talk. Dinner? Just us. I almost didn't reply. Part of me knew this wasn't for healing, it was for image control. But I agreed. On one condition, I'd choose the place. No casual corner booth or chain restaurant where she could play sweet wife for the crowd. I booked a private room at Bresson's, an upscale brasserie downtown with dim lighting, velvet chairs, and thick walls. It wasn't just a setting, it was a stage. I arrived 15 minutes early, wearing a suit she hadn't seen since our last wedding anniversary. It still fit, tighter in the shoulders now, but I liked the way it looked. Clean, intentional, sharp. I sat facing the door, ordered sparkling water, and waited. At 7:03 p.m., the hostess opened the curtain. Juliana walked in, followed by Camille and Meredith. I didn't flinch. I just smiled. Juliana tried for casual, jeans, a cardigan, hair in a loose bun like she just rolled out of an apology. Camille wore a designer blouse she definitely couldn't afford on her own. Meredith had on pearls and an expression like she was preparing to forgive me in advance. They acted surprised it was just us. Juliana tilted her head. You said dinner. I thought it'd be good to include the people it's impacted. I gestured toward the seats. By all means, let's all be impacted together. They sat. I waited until everyone had their water poured and napkins laid across their laps. Juliana was the first to speak. Marcus, this whole thing has gotten out of control. I know the party looked bad. I know the charge thing was unfortunate. But can we please not blow this up into something bigger than it has to be? Bigger? She didn't know how big it already was. Camille rolled her eyes. You freezing the accounts was extreme. You act like we robbed you. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a small Bluetooth speaker. Set it gently on the table. Pressed play. Camille's voice crackled through the quiet room, crystal clear. If Marcus finds out I used his account, I'll just cry. He's soft. He won't do anything. He never does. The silence after the recording ended was the kind that hums in your ears. Meredith choked on her water. Camille went stiff. Juliana blinked slowly like she was buffering in real time. Where did you get that? Camille snapped. I have ears, I said, placing a slim red folder next to my untouched plate. And I stopped being soft. I opened the folder and slid 3 stacks of paper toward them, each neatly labeled. Each a copy of digital receipts, Venmo logs, messages, and emails. I'd gone full forensic. Because if you want peace, you don't walk into battle empty-handed. Shared expenses, I said, tapping the first set. Turns out they weren't very shared. Here's $1,872.48 in siphoned funds from our joint emergency account, all under a dummy account tied to your sister's email. Juliana looked at Camille, then back at the folder. The second file I pointed to, jokes and comments. These are screenshots from your private chats. You and Camille mocking my birthday dinner, laughing about how I'd probably write a sad poem and go to bed. That was a good one. Meredith reached for a page, then recoiled like it burned. And this, I said, sliding the final section over, is titled Maple's Loot. It's a full list of everything purchased for that party. Cat champagne, designer collar, personalized invitations. Over $3,200 total, all while saying you were short on rent. Juliana's voice broke first. You were spying on me? I leaned back. No, I was noticing and documenting, which is more than you ever did for me. Camille was red with anger now. You're being petty. It was a party. And this, I said slowly, was my life. Juliana pushed her hair behind her ear, a nervous tick I used to find endearing. Marcus, this is all. It's just gotten out of hand. We didn't mean for it to hurt you. But it did, I said. And you knew it would. You just thought I'd swallow it like usual. Meredith finally spoke. Look, families go through things. This can be fixed. You love Juliana. That hasn't changed, right? I didn't answer her directly. Instead, I picked up the speaker again. Do you know what love without respect sounds like? It sounds like Camille saying she'll fake cry to avoid consequences. It sounds like Juliana calling me dramatic. And it sounds like you, Meredith, laughing about how Marcus will pay for anything if you smile enough. That was on a different recording, when I didn't play. Yet, Juliana's eyes welled. I waited to see if she'd cry for me or for herself. I didn't care either way anymore. Marcus, she whispered, is this your way of breaking up with me? I looked at my watch, then back at her. This is my way of reminding you that peace isn't just a word you say over dinner. It's something earned. And right now, you've all got a lot of back payments due. Camille stood abruptly. You're sick. This is twisted. I stood too slower, calmer. No, Camille. What's twisted is stealing from someone and calling it a surprise. What's sick is saying it's just a cat, when that same cat cost more than half the rent. And what's tragic is that none of you thought I'd notice because you've spent years convincing me not to. I left the folder on the table. No need to take it back. It was theirs now, like a gift. As I walked out of the restaurant, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel satisfied either. I just felt clean, like I had finally stopped carrying a weight that wasn't mine. The evening air was crisp, and the city lights hummed above me. Juliana didn't follow me out. I half expected her to, half hoped she would try, but she didn't, which made my next steps easier. That dinner wasn't for peace. It was proof that I'd stopped being their backup plan, and I was done asking for a seat at their table. I'd just build my own. You ever walk into a room knowing it'll never be the same when you leave it? That was me, standing outside that glass-walled cafe conference room, folder tucked under my arm, phone vibrating in my pocket, and one man standing beside me, Desmond Pierce. Now, I never thought I'd willingly share oxygen with Juliana's ex. She'd always painted him as this villain. Obsessive, she called him. Unstable, jealous, the kind who doesn't let go. I remember the look in her eyes when she talked about him. Just enough fear to make me back off, just enough tears to make me never question. I believed her. Until I didn't. Desmond had reached out after the video went viral. He didn't say much in his first message. Just, I know what you're dealing with. She did it to me too. I was skeptical. Who wouldn't be? But curiosity is a stubborn parasite. In truth, when it starts clawing at you, won't let you sleep. So I met him. Neutral ground. And what he showed me unraveled more than just a marriage. It cracked the foundation of everything I thought I understood about loyalty, memory, and the twisted art of manipulation. Inside the cafe, the air was colder than usual. Maybe it was the temperature. Maybe it was the three women seated across from each other. Juliana, Camille, and Meredith, each wearing a different flavor of fake calm. I walked in first. Desmond trailed behind me, not saying a word. He looked sharp, clean, with that unbothered confidence of someone who had nothing left to prove. Juliana's eyes widened the moment she saw him. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. Camille's face twisted like someone just spilled red wine on her overpriced dress. Meredith? She just froze, like someone had hit pause on a remote. Marcus, Juliana said slowly. What is he doing here? I smiled, not warm, not cruel. Just surgical. I figured if we're all clearing the air, it'd be useful to bring in the person you buried your skeletons next to. Camille scoffed. Oh, come on. This is petty. Desmond's ancient history. Desmond pulled out his chair and sat down, crossing one leg over the other, calm as ever. Ancient history has receipts. He opened his small binder, each page in a protective sleeve. Voicemails first, then screenshots, then court letters Juliana never thought I'd see. Pages of harassment claims that, when you put them side by side with Desmond's evidence, told a very different story. Juliana reached across the table like she wanted to snatch the binder. This is low, Marcus. No, I said. Low was you lying to me about everything. Low was you turning me into the villain when you were the one hiding the gun behind your back. Desmond flipped to a text exchange from 2 years ago. Her words, in all caps, if you tell anyone what we did, I swear I will ruin your life. Another message, you owe me silence. I took the fall for you. I leaned forward. Tell me, Juliana, what was it you said Desmond did again? Harassment? Emotional abuse? She blinked fast. You don't understand the full context. I understand enough, I cut in. I understand that you lied to cover your tracks. That you destroyed a man's reputation and weaponized sympathy like it was a loyalty card. Meredith finally found her voice. Marcus, I'm sure there's more to this. You're just... Stop. I turned T. You've all played your parts in this circus. But this act? It's over. Camille's voice cracked. None of this justifies airing our family business online. You embarrassed us. I tilted my head. No, you embarrassed yourselves. I just opened the window and let the smell out. Juliana looked desperate now. She turned to Desmond. Why would you come here? Why dig this up after all this time? Desmond didn't even blink. Because someone finally had the guts to stand up to you. I figured he deserved to know what you buried to keep your story clean. I sat back. Let the silence marinate. The weight of their secrets. The collapse of their performance. You could almost hear it. The slow cracking of the image they'd built. One carefully curated Instagram filter at a time. Juliana stood suddenly, snatching her purse. This is ridiculous. You're all pathetic. I looked at her one last time. The woman I married, the woman I once adored, was now just someone I used to know, standing there with shaking hands and a tangled past. You don't get to lie and still call it love, I said quietly. You don't get to break people and still play the victim. That chapter's closed. Permanently. She left. Camille followed. Meredith hesitated, then slowly rose without a word. They didn't finish their drinks. Didn't look back. Desmond and I sat in silence for a while. Then he chuckled. I waited a long time to see that. I'm sorry it took so long, I said. But thank you. For showing up. He nodded. Takes guts to walk into the fire. But sometimes fire purifies. We shook hands, and he left. I stayed back a little longer, sipping the coffee I'd barely touched. The chair where Juliana had sat was still warm, but the room felt colder. Clearer. It hit me then. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about clarity. About reclaiming the truth when lies had warped my reality for too long. I paid the bill, walked out into the evening air, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I breathed easy. No more pretending. No more hiding behind calm smiles and polite excuses. The truth was out, and it had scorched the lies to ash. Whatever came next, I was ready for it. Alone maybe, but free. When I first sat down to record the video, I had no plan, just an ache in my chest and a quiet sort of fury that no longer screamed, just simmered. You know the kind. The anger that's too tired to yell but sharp enough to cut through steel. I opened my laptop, stared into the camera, and said nothing for a while. Just looked at myself. 34 years old. Once the man who'd surprise his wife with poetry on sticky notes and jazz playlists on long drives. Now, just a guy with a stack of receipts and a story too ridiculous to keep buried. I hit record. My name doesn't matter. I began, voice low but steady. But here's a story you probably won't believe. I took a breath and leaned closer. My wife skipped my birthday to attend her sister's cat's birthday party. A Persian cat. Named Maple. There were hats. A cake. Matching shirts. You might think that's the worst part. It isn't. I laid it out like I was giving a presentation. Methodical, calm, and deliberate. I showed blurred screenshots of charges made to my account. $2,500 for elite cat portraits. Another attempt for a cat and me retreat in Napa. I pixelated names, faces, anything personal. I wasn't doing this for revenge. Not entirely. I was doing this for closure. Maybe clarity. Or maybe just because no one would have believed me otherwise. Then I scrolled through the Maple's milestone bash folder, captured images from the party. I paused on the custom 3-tier cake with edible gold, the diamond collar, and the group selfie where my wife wore a tiara that I'd paid for, without knowing it. That, I said, was the night I sat alone, eating cold takeout, and realized I'd been replaced by a cat. I didn't yell. I didn't rant. I just told the truth. I played a clip of a message from her sister. We're family, Marcus. You're being dramatic. I read one from her mom. You're embarrassing everyone with this financial paranoia. I smiled, wry and tired. Turns out, blocking their numbers was the best financial decision I ever made. I even included a brief audio clip, Camille's voice from the dinner, recorded legally in my state, where she said, "If Marcus finds out I used his account, I'll just cry. He's soft. He won't do anything." I paused the video, looked directly into the camera. Wrong. I ended the video with one line. Don't let anyone convince you loyalty is owed just because you signed a marriage certificate. That's not loyalty. That's leverage. I uploaded it to a channel I named Not the Favorite Husband. No fancy thumbnail. No SEO magic. Just raw honesty. Then I shut the laptop and went to make tea. I expected maybe a handful of views. A few people laughing in the comments. I figured I'd check back in a few days, maybe take it down if it got too weird. But by the time the water finished boiling, the video had 19,000 views. By the time I finished sipping my tea, it had hit 47,000. When I woke up the next morning, it had crossed 180,000. I don't know what algorithmic gods blessed that upload, but the comment section was exploding. People weren't just watching, they were feeling. There were men sharing their own stories. Women writing things like, I love my cat, but this is psychotic, and this is why emotional theft is harder to prove, but just as brutal. I sat on my couch, scrolling through messages and offers. A podcast wanted an interview. A YouTube drama channel asked if they could break down the timeline. An influencer offered to collab on an emotional healing series, with emojis and all. One woman messaged, my ex sold my grandmother's ring to buy an air fryer for his side chick. You've inspired me to speak up. I wasn't trying to become a symbol. I wasn't trying to start a movement. But there it was. A floodgate. A wave. A sudden, roaring army of people who finally felt seen. And somehow, I was the one who cracked it open with a cat party confession. Juliana found the video within 36 hours. I knew because she called me 13 times in a row. I didn't answer. I just watched her text come in. You're making a fool of us both. This is petty and cruel. How could you put our personal life out there like that? Even Maple's been acting depressed. That one made me laugh out loud. The cat's depressed? Really? The next one? Less funny. Camille's getting harassed. People are calling her cat thief Barbie. Take the video down or I'll sue. There it was. The legal threat. My personal favorite. I replied once, all facts, no names. Enjoy the fame. And I meant it. I hadn't defamed anyone. I hadn't shown full names or unblurred photos. Just facts, dates, and my own bank statements. Nothing more. Nothing less. It was oddly cathartic watching the view count tick upward, like each number was another piece of weight lifted off my chest. I hadn't realized how much I'd swallowed over the years. How many jokes at my expense I'd laughed at just to keep peace. How many dinners I'd paid for while being treated like a footnote. No, the truth was out. And people weren't just watching, they were backing me. The comments grew wilder. Bro got outplayed by a Persian queen, but came back with a PowerPoint. Maple's party will go down in betrayal history. I want a man who responds to betrayal with receipts and calm narration. I wasn't healed yet. Not even close. But I was seen. And sometimes, being seen is the first step to healing. Later that week, I bought a microphone, upgraded the camera, recorded a second video. This one was called, When Support Family Means Emptying Your Wallet. It wasn't about Juliana this time. It was about how often partners are guilted into financial support for in-laws who never show loyalty in return. That video did even better. Within a month, Not the Favorite Husband had 100,000 subscribers. I wasn't trying to monetize trauma, but I was finally turning mine into something that served me, not them. And that felt like justice. I'll never forget the first morning I woke up in my new place. Not because it was lavish, it wasn't. It was a modest one-bedroom with creaky wooden floors and a balcony view of a discount grocery store, but because it was mine. Not mine through compromise or shared with someone who'd mock me behind my back. Mine, entirely. My toothbrush, my coffee mug, my piece. No pastel throw pillows I never picked. No cat hair in my cereal. No passive-aggressive sticky notes on the fridge. I'd signed the lease 2 days after walking out of that dinner. I hadn't even told anyone. Just walked into the building, met the landlord, filled out the paperwork, and signed. I left the rest of my old life behind in a neat envelope I slid under the door of the apartment Juliana and I used to share. Keys, a list of what I'd taken, and a simple note that read, I'm done making excuses for your choices. Freedom didn't come in a grand gesture. It came in little things. The silence after the door shut. The sunlight pouring through a window that I didn't have to share. The unmatched socks on my feet because I didn't care if they matched anymore. I didn't have to walk on eggshells or watch someone pretend a cat's birthday was more valuable than our marriage. I could breathe again. But even as I started building this new life, the weight of what happened lingered. Not in bitterness, but in clarity. I realized how many men were out there, sitting in silence, unsure of how to process being disrespected without being called dramatic. Men who gave, and gave, and gave, and when they finally stopped giving, were called cruel. I wasn't the only one who'd been replaced by a pet, emotionally blackmailed by a family who weaponized words like support and obligation. So I took the $1,872.48, every single cent Juliana and Camille had stolen, and turned it into something else. I created a grant, a fund, a tiny rebellion with a funny name, the Maple Fund. It started as a joke, honestly. I opened a new account, named it after the very cat who was crowned queen while I was forgotten. But the purpose? It was no joke. The Maple Fund would go to help men starting over after emotional abuse. No court drama. No messy custody battles. Just quiet, personal grief that often got dismissed as weakness. I wasn't rich, but I had savings. I built a simple website, shared my story anonymously. Within 2 weeks, the fund had received over 300 emails. Stories that made mine look tame. Stories where men lost everything and were told to man up. But I didn't need to post any names. I didn't have to call Juliana or her family out. I just let people find the story on their own. That was the beauty of it. The Maple Fund wasn't revenge, it was relief. It was taking pain and making it functional. When my birthday came around again, I did something small. Just a dinner with 2 coworkers who'd stood by me when I was spiraling. We had homemade pasta and watched old comedy specials. No hats. No matching shirts. Just laughter that didn't feel forced. They gave me a cupcake with 1 candle. And when I blew it out, I didn't wish to undo the past. I just wished to keep the peace I'd found. I posted a photo on my personal page. Me, holding that cupcake, grinning like a man who finally liked his own company. The caption was simple: first birthday without them. Best one yet. That's when the messages started again. Juliana emailed me. Maple's been depressed. She won't eat. She keeps lying by the door. I hope you're proud. I stared at the screen for a while. Not angry. Not sad. Just amused. She genuinely thought this was my fault. That a cat's mood was a moral indictment. That guilt would work after all of it. So I replied. Once. Just once. Tell Maple I said meow. Then I blocked her. Email, phone, social. Everything. A clean cut. After that, Meredith sent a voice note. Tearful, dramatic, all about the family breaking apart. Camille tried next with a long rant about how none of this was serious, and you're being cold for no reason. But I didn't owe them warmth. I didn't owe them explanations. My silence became my new language, and honestly, it spoke louder than anything else. I donated Maple's ridiculous tiara. Yep, the one Juliana tried to get custom-made with my card. Turned out it was returned after the payment didn't go through. I contacted the boutique quietly, bought it myself, and gave it to a local shelter running a fundraiser. The irony wasn't lost on me. Donated by the man who chose freedom. That's what the donation slip said. I framed a copy and put it above my coffee station in the new place. I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need a dramatic final scene. The Real win was the life I built when they thought I was going to spiral. They expected me to beg, to chase, to crumble. Instead, I laughed more, slept deeper, drank better coffee. The best part? That damn tiara raised enough at the auction to cover vet bills for 5 senior rescue cats. Imagine that, Maple's crown finally doing something noble. I started mentoring a few applicants from the fund. Men who were trying to restart after losing everything. I told them what no one told me: it's not your job to fix the ones who broke you. I reminded them that starting over isn't weakness. It's strategy. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away with your dignity and let silence be your applause. That was my favorite part. The quiet. No drama. No screaming. No long-winded arguments about who was overreacting. Just me. A new life. A clean space. A full heart. And not a single cat hair in sight. The strange thing about peace is that it never shows up wearing bells. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't tap on your window in the middle of the night or kick down the door screaming it's here. No, it just quietly settles in, like steam in a warm kitchen, like sunlight on the edge of your pillow when the storm finally passes. That's what I felt the first morning I didn't check my phone for one of Juliana's messages. The silence was still. Not lonely. Just still. I got up, made coffee in a chipped mug from college, and sat by the window of my new apartment, watching the city stretch awake beneath me. No one yelling in the background. No cat meowing like royalty in the next room. No, Marcus, can you just, trailing from the other end of the hallway. Just birds, traffic, and peace. Meredith was the first to try and slip her way back in. She sent a card handwritten, the kind with overly floral font and a sunset on the front. Inside, it read, "Family fights, but family heals. I hope you'll remember the love we still have for you." I stared at that line for a while. Love? I thought about how many times I bailed her out of her impulsive choices, how many times she laughed when her daughters mocked me like I was some soft toy to be played with, how many times she gave them excuses but never gave me space. Then I folded the card and dropped it into the recycling bin without another thought. 2 days later, Camille sent a DM. No apology. Just a photo of Maple sitting in a window wearing one of the collars Juliana bought with our shared savings. The caption said, "Maple misses her uncle. She's still your niece, you know." I didn't reply. I didn't even let myself laugh, though I could feel it crawling up my throat. I simply archived the message and moved on. Instead of returning the energy they threw at me, I created a final post for the page. It was just a photo. Nothing dramatic, no confrontation, no explanation. Just a ceramic coffee mug sitting next to a small plate of shortbread cookies. The mug said, "You can't guilt-trip someone who isn't riding with you anymore." That was it. That was my farewell. No essay. No memoir. Just a statement. And it hit harder than any rant ever could. I changed my number the next day. Not because I was hiding, but because I was done explaining my exit to people who never questioned their trespassing. My email was filtered. Social media accounts, wiped clean except for the channel. I left everything else behind, except for one final errand. I found the receipt for the tiara. Maple's gold-plated, rhinestone-encrusted birthday crown. The one that cost $312.42 and sat atop her little feline head like she was Empress of Persia. I traced the vendor down, explained the situation, and miracle of miracles, they offered a partial refund. Apparently, I wasn't the first person to complain that the tiara's diamonds looked suspiciously like beads from a craft store. I laughed and told the woman on the phone, "You've just helped fund a rescue mission." That tiara? I donated it to a local pet shelter for their upcoming fundraiser auction. They asked for the story behind it. I simply said, "It used to represent someone else's control. Now it can feed 30 strays." Let Juliana know that. Let Camille and Meredith throw their parties. Let them keep the group chats and the filtered pictures and their shallow status games. I kept something better. My dignity. My clarity. My peace. The Maple Fund started gaining traction too. It was small at first, just a quiet page where men could apply for small grants to cover emergency moves, legal consultations, therapy, even groceries during transitions out of toxic relationships. The press called it an unexpected twist from a man who was once mocked for caring too much. They meant it as a compliment. I took it as a challenge. What if caring isn't weakness? What if it's the final act of defiance in a world that tells you to stop? A month after the launch, I sat in my living room scrolling through emails. One caught my eye. The subject line read, "You saved me." It was from a man in Minnesota who left his house after his wife demanded he transfer his inheritance to fund her wellness retreat empire. He said, "I watched your video on a loop for 2 days. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted peace, and I didn't know what it looked like until I saw someone choose it." That was the moment I realized. It was never about the cat. It was about the cracks they kept painting over. The casual disrespect. The subtle manipulation. The way they laughed after every jab, claiming it was just a joke, until the jokes came with price tags and emotional bruises. They called it family. I called it a slow erosion. And now? I call it over. On my shelf sits a black folder labeled Closed Chapters. Inside are printouts of old bank records, screenshots, letters I never sent, and one final page, a photo of me on my birthday, standing on the rooftop bar I'd originally booked. I went alone this year, ordered the same dessert, wore the same blazer, and smiled for the camera. The caption I wrote on the back of the photo? "Sometimes the person you needed to celebrate you was just you." People ask if I regret it, if I miss her, if I miss them. I tell them this. I miss who I thought she was, not who she chose to become. I miss the feeling of being chosen, not the desperation of begging to matter. I miss being a husband, but not to someone who replaced me with a birthday balloon that meowed. This piece wasn't handed to me. I wasn't given permission. I wasn't offered closure. I chose it. I built it. I walked through the fire with receipts in hand and silence as my sword. And when I came out the other side, I didn't need applause. I didn't need revenge. Just a mug of hot coffee, a clean room, and the freedom to never be treated like a joke again. And to anyone out there reading this, watching this, feeling like they're not enough unless they become someone else's doormat, I'll tell you what I learned the hard way. You are not hard to love. You're just surrounded by people who find it easier to mock than to mirror.